Welcome to 10 for 10, a series of interviews with personalities and dedicated leaders across the Major Arena Soccer League, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary. I'm your host, Eric Bergrud. For our final episode, I am joined by the longtime award-winning voice of the Kansas City Comets, Nick Vasos. Welcome to 10 for 10, Nick.
Howdy, partner. How are you?
I am doing great. Here's my first question for you, Nick. You got your start calling games on radio for the NPSL's Kansas City Attack. What are the similarities and differences between announcing indoor soccer games for listeners and viewers?
Let's see. First one, when I started, there was no internet. All right. We used landlines. Do you know what that is, Eric? Do you still know what that is?
I'm familiar with landlines. I don't own any, but I know what they are.
So, yeah, it was completely different. Getting a game on the air back in those days was very, very different. Just from a technical standpoint, I had two large bags with me of wires, cables, boxes, telephone lines, connectors, microphones, recording device, cables that connected to that, a mixer, all of those things I would carry with me just to get us on the air. So I was my own engineer, my own producer, my own play-by-play voice, and that's how it went. Now, in terms of editorially, when you're doing radio, and Eric, you know this, you have to be more descriptive about the play. You have to kind of describe which way the play is going. Is it going left or right? How fast is the ball moving? Is it whistling or is it floating? You know, you try to add words that can describe where the ball is on the field so you can give your listener an idea that the player is moving right to left, across the half line, inside the opposition's yellow line, in the left wing corner, in the right wing corner. And how it's different than how we do it today, you and I, Eric, of course, we have we have television, we have cameras, we've got cameras all over the arena. So it's the cameras also help tell the story. So we can be less descriptive and add more context to the game just by doing it that way.
So you used to travel with the team on the road during your radio era. Do you miss those days?
I do. I mean, I do. I really do. And here's the reason why. If you're in team sports, and this is why I love team sports, and that is because the season really takes on a life of its own. It's not one game. It's not the championship game that really, matters to you as a player or as a person who's involved with the team. It's the entire journey. It's the entire body of work that starts from the beginning of the season, through the middle of the season, through all of the challenges, through the road trips. The road trips is where you really learn a lot about not only yourself, but you learn a lot about the players, and you see it with your own eyes. You can see whether it's exhilarating, whether they're doing so well, or whether they're struggling and trying to find a way just to get past this weekend and maybe get back home so that you can win, a couple of more games. The road is a funny place. It's a tough place to be. It's tiring. It's exhausting, but it's also very rewarding in that you really can form a lot of meaningful, lasting relationships with those who you spend so much time with on the road. And that's how I think a team can really bond. I'm not on the team, of course, but I was sort of I was adjacent. I was the play-by-play guy. I was there. I was reporting everything that happened with the team. And those are special moments. And those are the ones that I remember the most.
So you mentioned championships. You had the special opportunity to call a championship series during your first year with Kansas City and most recently in 2014. For those of us who have never had that opportunity, what is it like?
Well, I tell you, Eric, the first time the 96-97 championship that the Attack won was my first year as the radio play-by-play voice. And sometimes I think back and I go, boy, I wish I knew then what I know now. But I guess I was right where I was supposed to be. It was, I guess what I look back is like what I didn't know, like what I didn't know about the road, what I didn't know about, perspective and context and how rare it is, to win. I knew we had a good team, and going through the playoffs was one of the funnest things I've ever done in my life. Following the team, Jim Schwab and Kevin Ketters and Lee Tashantred, Wes Wade, Jason Farrell, Sammy Akime, Nate Hauser. I mean, all those guys, they played their tails off and were so hot and they were so loose. I mean, I could tell these guys were having fun. They were kicking it around. They were really, nothing was going to stop them from winning it. And when they swept Cleveland in 4 games on Mother's Day for Game 4, I mean, that was the icing on the cake, and it was exhilarating. It was unbelievable. Now in 13-14, 13-14, it was a little bit different because those days back in the NPSL, we played a best of 7 series. In the MISL, by the way, the last year of the MISL before they switched over to the MASL, it was a home and home best of 3 series. And that year we got Baltimore, which was a nemesis for the Comets back then, as you know.
I do know. So I also know that you've conducted scores of interviews over your indoor soccer announcing career. Is there one that stands out above the rest?
I've been thinking about this for a while, and I didn't know how I was going to approach it. But let me just remind everybody. The following year, the Comets, when the Comets went to the MASL, the first year in the MASL, they were undefeated, a 20-0 record. Leo Gibson set the league's single game scoring record. I think it still stands. I think it's still 16 points. Incredible. In one game, the Comets were rolling. I think they had their best team. They were unstoppable until Baltimore showed up, and they swept the Comets in 2 games that year. And a very ugly incident happened at the end of that game that we all know about. Very ugly incident. Nobody will forget it. So the season goes away, and the next season comes up. And sure enough, Baltimore comes to Kansas City again. And the owner of the Baltimore Blast come to Kansas City, Mr. Ed Hale. And Mr. Ed Hale agreed to come on and talk to us at halftime. And Ed Hale was still very upset about what happened in the semifinals of last year's playoff games with the Comets, the headbutting incident. I mean, if you don't know, that's what we're talking about. And I just remember the interview being one of the most intense conversations that we had. I wanted to give Mr. Hale the opportunity to speak. I also wanted to let people know, for the record, Kansas City's kind of position, and I didn't want any trash talking on the air. But we got to hear from Mr. Hale, and it was probably the most intense conversation I've had. We had to end it early because Mr. Hale was getting a little. I'll just leave it at that. He was going a little far, but it just goes to show you the intense rivalry. And I mean, there's been some great interviews, but that one was probably the most intense I have ever experienced in my career.
Let's go on a lighter note, okay, Nick?
Thank you. Okay.
All right, here we go. Brian Miller and Brian Martin. Is it really that difficult to get their names straight?
I've struggled with this, Eric, over the years, and I think I'm just going to continue to struggle with it. Ryan Siggins still has not put Miller and Martin together in a game again. I cannot believe he's done that. And I probably should be thanking him, because it is a comedy of errors whenever those two are near each other. I don't know what tripped me up on that. I think I wrote it down wrong one time, because, Eric, I write everything down. I don't type things out. I write everything down. And I think I wrote down Brian Miller's name and not Brian Martin's name. And then from there, I just got nervous about screwing it up so many times that I goofed it up again and again. So I will keep trying. I will keep focusing. I'll try to write it down correctly. Mr. Miller, Mr. Martin, I will do my best to honor both of you on the floor.
Very good. A couple more questions. What is your perspective on MASL teams and broadcasters interacting with fans on social media?
First time for me, and it's instant feedback. It's I think it's kind of cool. This is, you and I have done this, and I think it's kind of fun interacting with fans during the games. We have a lot on our plate when we're doing the games, as you know, but the fans are what is the biggest part of the game, right? I mean, we're doing this for the fans, and so I think it's kind of cool to interact with them. You do more than I do, but I'm also in the Twitch chat when the comments are on the road, so I'm seeing all of the comments out there as well. I think we're one of the only leagues that does this and lets fans interact with each other while the game is going on. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a healthy thing. And people get out of line, well, you're asked to leave. You know what I mean? So have fun with it.
There you go. So here's my final question. If you had to pick your favorite moment of the MASL's first 10 years, what would it be and why?
I think it would have to be the 2020 All-Star game during the pandemic. Clearly, it was a challenge for all of the teams. Some teams were in states that had severe lockdowns. They couldn't get their teams out. Other states were a little bit more relaxed. We could still kind of operate like we could here in the state of Missouri. And there were some big questions with COVID and our league and how we were going to show out. And I must say that I was so proud of our owners, of our leaders, of our team managers, so proud of the players who really stepped up too, who all came to Kansas City, and how the Comets organization welcomed everybody in, made them feel special, made this feel like a one-of-a-kind event, and really showed off the game in a way that we kind of like never have before. And then, of course, the season that took place too, and the playoffs at Cable Dahmer Arena during COVID too. It was such a Herculean effort by everyone, and everybody was on board. Everybody was going to make this happen. Everybody was not going to let it go away, and that's what I love. And that just shows me the heart and the care that a lot of people in the MASL have for this game, me included.
Well, thank you for your time, Nick. And thanks to each of you for joining us. Visit MASLsoccer.com for additional league news and original content.